And what's up? My name is Mateo. Welcome back. Um, as I say before every video, it's been a while, but we've been gone for good reason. We've been gone for good reason. The business is doing extraordinarily well. I've been very blessed, and I've been very busy for that reason. And today, actually Monday, but traditionally it's today, is the corporate tax deadline here in the United States for all businesses that identify as corporations. And we have been ahead of the curve by finishing everybody for the deadline. No extensions except for one. And it's been incredibly fruitful the last few months. And I'm sorry to report that almost nobody pays me Monero. I mean, I offer a 5% discount for everybody who comes to me and wants to pay a Monero or Zano, but nobody really seems to be interested in that. I put it on the invoice for every invoice that I send out. I have my Monero address, and then I have my, Zano alias, and that's one reason I like Zano is the aliases. I don't have to type out the long string of letters and numbers. I just type in at Zano CPA. It's like a Zelle address, and should they decide to use that, then I can get paid in it. But in total, so far, I haven't been paid in any Zano whatsoever. Monero, I've received like just a couple of payments. But what's funny is, and this is why I want to talk about this today, is because I think Monero adoption is going to increase rather substantially after full chain membership proofs comes. And I think we really ought to make that push after that happens because really what I think some people are concerned about with Monero and crypto in general and why they don't really use it for business is one is because the whole psyop that it's a store of value and it's just kind of like an offshore Swiss bank account and we don't actually want to use it as money. That's this whole psyop thing. And, is it an offshore Swiss bank account? That sounds sexy and whatever. But ultimately, we just want it to be used as money at the end of the day if we want this to really succeed. So there is that. And then it's also the accessibility issue, which is, getting better with Havana and decentralized exchanges coming online. And I guess Saridex is pretty close as well. But generally speaking, most people have challenges when it comes to getting Monero in the first place. Like I imagine if I offered a 5% discount for Bitcoin or Litecoin payments, and who knows, maybe I should offer Litecoin as a payment option, but I would want them to use Mimblewimble. I wouldn't want them to use like the public blockchain version. But let's say I did do that. I think that I'd probably get more people interested in doing that because they could just simply make a Coinbase account. They could then buy some, Litecoin or Bitcoin on there, and then they could just transfer it to my wallet. Voila, it's done. But with Monero and Zano, it's a little bit more of a, progression. It's a little bit more complicated, and you have to take your Bitcoin to Litecoin to a different exchange to then buy the Monero, and most people just don't want to get into all that, especially when you offer like Trade Ogre or Cake Wallet as like a swapping service. They don't really seem to take those kinds of things really too seriously. Although we love Cake Wallet, we have our Cake Wallet gear on. Shouts out to Cake Wallet. Shouts out to Vic and the team. Always ahead of the curve. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective as a business owner that works with other business owners, nobody really uses crypto. I mean, that's sort of the reality. And I want that to change because, this is the best form of money. And I guess we should specifically say currency, whether it's the best form of money at the end of the day. Maybe Peter Schiff would have a problem with saying. And that is a little bit more of an interesting kind of debate to be had is the whole store of value thing. I think it's the best medium of exchange ever made, that's for certain. The best form of currency ever made, I think that's for certain. But not to even get into all that, although Peter Schiff did comment lately on Monero. He's been commenting on Monero, and he said that Monero with its privacy features makes it much more valuable than Bitcoin. Although, how do you gauge the value? That was his question, because it's not like a commodity that's used. It's more or less just used for its own purposes, and that's what I would say in rebuttal is that is the use case, and that's what gives it value is the fact that you have peer-to-peer private transactions which can take place within a system where you have an algorithmic established inflation rate, and you relatively know what to expect from the protocol, and that has value. And not to even go into that whole thing, but um, yeah, just almost nobody really uses crypto as we intended it to be used, like at the very beginning. But that's okay, and I think that's going to change with FCMP and I'll explain why. And at the end of the day, it's going to require effort from all of us to try to encourage businesses to adopt Monero. I know I'm out here trying to get people to pay in Monero. Maybe I'm not doing as good enough job, and it is a little bit of a discomforting at times situation where I bring on a new client, and they're an established client, and they're looking for a reputable, reliant, ethical CPA, and here's their CPA asking them to use this dark web money, and it's like, for me, the way that I reason that, it's good to use Monero instead of Bitcoin or these other cryptocurrencies because I'm in the business of financial data protection. And why would I want to encourage a client of mine to pay me in a cryptocurrency that exposes all of their data to a public blockchain, right? Like, that's not something that I think is responsible, actually, at the end of the day. I think that the responsible thing to do as a CPA that takes ethics and integrity of client data very seriously is to encourage them to use something like Monero. So even though there is like a little bit of a weird like social pressure in my mind thing where it's just like, all right, I'm asking people to use this untraceable currency, and here I am as a CPA where I do everything above board. It's like there is that little contrasting conflict, but virtually nobody even asks about it. But so I'll try to do maybe a better job and maybe include some onboarding resources. But regardless, I think that as Monero gets more popular, which it definitely is, looking at Twitter and looking at all the big accounts that are starting to talk about privacy cryptos. Roger Ver being on Tucker Carlson talking about Zano and Monero, and Aaron Day being on these major shows talking about the importance of privacy in crypto. I think that this is going to become more normalized. And I think that we are at the very beginning of the adoption curve, and we kind of have to take some responsibility in encouraging businesses to use this stuff. But that's going to be easier with full chain membership proofs. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. We just got an update from Monero, the main account, the official account on X. The integration of full chain membership proofs into the Monero code base is progressing well. And here's a little video you can watch on it. Basically explains the basics of it. Basically, it's going to make privacy on Monero go hyper-nuclear. The anonymity set's going to be significantly better, and that's kind of important because there was a research report that came out relatively recently where it saw that the effective ring size of Monero was more like 4 instead of 16, which means that the privacy on Monero, to kind of put it blandly, not to speak too nuancedly about it because I'm not really that sophisticated when it comes to this stuff, but it's like not as good as we thought it was. Maybe one fourth to one half the privacy that was conventionally expected as a result of this research paper's analysis. Now you still have stealth addresses, and if you have decent OPSEC, we're using different sub addresses for different transactions. You're genuinely okay. But full chain membership proofs couldn't come at a better time, so as to greatly improve the privacy and to get ring signatures, which some really good developers like Amir Taki have noted is one of the main weaknesses of Monero's privacy is ring signatures. So this is going to kind of supersede that and take Monero's privacy to the next level. So you have that, and then you have what I actually think is perhaps a bigger deal, which is the improvement in the view key feature. Because right now with Monero, with view keys, people can see transactions going into a wallet, but they can't see transactions coming out of a wallet. And, that's not ideal for a number of reasons. And I'll tell you why it's ideal to have both transactions being seen going into the wallet and out of the wallet as selective transparency. Um, so basically, to sum it up, full chain membership proofs maximizes the amount of privacy default in the protocol, and then also maximizes the selective transparency for the protocol, the opt-in selective transparency. And that is the ultimate paradigm that could be fulfilled, is privacy by default but selective transparency. And that, in my opinion, is indicative of true money, because every true money, gold, silver, cash, even though that is fiat funny money. But it's default private, but you opt into um, systems of transparency. Even if you're using cash and you're a business, you get cash receipts, you get bank deposit slips, and you save all these things in case an auditor wants to come in and kind of check out what you're doing as your business. And, they want to see the source documents that prove the inflows and outflows of cash that are being reported on the books, right? So Monero allows that to be done a lot easier without all that stuff going on by just having view keys. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But um, so let's talk a little bit about some of the practical use cases going from the totally irregulated world to the regulated world. And because this is going to be very important for businesses of all stripes that exist throughout the world. And then I want to talk a little bit about the accounting side, because I think the accounting side of things is something that's kind of slept on a little bit in the crypto world in regards to business adoption. And I'm biased because I'm an accountant, but accounting is the language of business. And if you don't make a programmable money that integrates well into systems that speak that language efficiently, then you're not optimizing the capacity for adoption. And there are a couple of wallets that have made that a priority. Edge Wallet is one where you can actually export your Monero transactions to a QuickBooks file and then upload that to QuickBooks. You can also easily do that with a CSV file. And I do have an intention at one point to make a video on how you can easily upload a CSV file from like a Cake wallet or an Edge wallet or another Monero wallet to your QuickBooks, and then you could easily input those transactions and how to do all that. But we'll talk more about the accounting thing near the end, but that is important. But let's start in a kind of unregulated black market type environment. Like, how can businesses take advantage of full chain membership proofs, that view key feature? Well, let's say that, like, you know, you're the cartel or something, right? We're just speaking totally hypothetically. And, you're the head honcho, bro. You're the Gustavo Gringo Heisenberg, bro, who's at the top of the cartel chain. And you've got your street bros out there who are running the business, who are collecting the cash, but they also maybe have some business expenses. And so what you do is you give them a Monero wallet. And so let's say that you give them each like 100 Monero, and you want to make sure that they're not just blowing the Monero on a bunch of crap. Well, you just make sure you get the view key for those wallets, and then you can see the amounts going into and out of a wallet. And then when they come back, you put on your brass knuckles and you say, hey, why don't you let me know what these transactions are for? Because I saw every transaction you made. Do you have your receipts? Do you have your explanation for these transactions? And then you can also see the amount of Monero going into those wallets. And so if, the person comes back and they transfer, you know, not all the Monero into the repository that they have in the wallet, then you can confront them and say, hey, hombre, where's the rest of the Monero? I see that you got it. And then if they lie, therein is the purpose of the brass knuckles, right? And so like that's one useful thing with the view keys, is that you can have internal audits get done by people within the business. So even though the transactions remain private for everybody on the outside, people on the inside, and this may not just be like, the kingpin who wants to just be micromanaging everybody who's in his organization, but also, I think cartels have accountants, right? So they want to have the accountants record these transactions in real time. And then, they have a good set of books, which us CPAs love good sets of books, right? And so that's one thing that could be very useful in the unregulated world is, okay, well, even though you don't want to opt into a regulatory system, and I'm not advocating for anything here, okay, gentlemen, I'm just being totally hypothetical, you at least want to have some level of um information transparency so that you can make sure that your business is running efficiently and you're making sure that none of the internal funds that belong to the business are being embezzled by any of the uh, team members, I guess we'll call them. So that's, one, um, potential for the use case of full chain membership. Okay, and then if you have a business, right, and we're not even talking about full on regulation, but you are a business, you want to comply with regulations, and you're just an ordinary business that's running your business, right? Maybe you're not even all that concerned about external audits, which we'll get to here in a sec, but you are somebody who is concerned about those kinds of similar things. So let's say that you have a clothing line and you're running a very successful clothing line. And so you're wanting to open up different retail stores. And so what you do is you open up your different branches, you have those different team members, managers running those branches. And so you do a similar thing. You give them a Monero wallet. And so then you can have them have their own Monero wallets, and this is very normal in business, right? So in a lot of businesses, you'll give your employees or you give your managers like corporate credit cards, and this is so that they can take clients out to dinner. They can go ahead and buy supplies for the business as needed. They can restock inventory if necessary, without having to go to like the person running the business or the controller to make these transactions. You have that kind of decentralized command taking place. And so what you do is you give these people their own respective Monero wallets, and then they go ahead and try to make purchases as necessary. And you can make sure that the purchases are being made in accordance with the need of the business by having them get a receipt for the transactions that are being done. And they can prove those transactions. And one idea that I thought was a good idea, and by the way, this is Riot who informed me that Edgewalt has had QBO exporting features for a while. So there's that. Shouts out to Edgewalt. But here's what would be good. This is what would be ideal. If you're running this kind of business and you want to have good internal auditing to make sure that your team members and managers aren't embezzling funds or they're not using the money for things that are not business related, right? Because that is a concern. You have a private blockchain, and the view keys, they don't necessarily show you what the transactions are being used for. All that it shows you is that you have amounts going out and then you have amounts coming in, right? And so one idea that I had was for your managers and your team members and your employees, they put in the notes section of the wallet what the purpose of the transaction is. If they're buying supplies, they put that in there. If they're buying meals and they're working with clients, they put that in there. And then what they do at the end of every accounting period is they export the notes from the wallet and then they send it to the accountant so that they can update the categorization of the transactions onto the books. But one of the issues that I thought about in regards to that was the fact that they could just make up those expenses, right? What if your employees or managers are actually just sending the amounts to their own wallet? They're just distributing the funds and they're embezzling the funds. You wouldn't be able to know that by just looking at the view key. And so, how do you get around that? Well, here's what you actually need. You need to have the people who are part of the Monero ecosystem embed in their QR codes, and these are, of course, regulated entities, presumably, right? Um, what they do is they embed in the QR code what it is that the person is buying, whatever it is the person is purchasing. And so, Tuxedo, you had put this down here, right? So this is a cool little tool right here, and apparently this was at MoneroCon. This is like a point of sale type of thing. It pops up QR code for whatever is being purchased. You use your Cake wallet, and then you scan the code. You make a purchase, and what's cool is you have a receipt that prints out right there, which is super cool. But I don't see on that receipt like the specifics as to what's being purchased. So if on the QR code, and this is doable, by the way, somebody had told me that this is actually doable. I believe somebody, yeah, Bangala, you said you put the data you want to embed in transaction description with the URL formatting. If you export the .csv, you will have the descriptions. So that's kind of cool, right? And the reason that's cool is because if that's something that is imported into a notes section and you make it so that the uh, people running the wallets, right, the people who own the wallets cannot adjust the notes section, it's embedded in there. And maybe that's like a feature of a kind of wallet that you could have. Maybe that's not a great thing to have as just like a default feature for a wallet, but that's something that people can opt into. Then you can prevent embezzlement because you can just have the explanation as to what's purchased go into the wallet, and maybe there could be like a secondary section where an accountant or the employee could add information as to the purchase, but you know it's like a bank text for any accountants out there who work with like QuickBooks or know a little bit about the accounting process. It's like when you're doing monthly accounting, your clients will send you statements, right, for their credit cards or their bank, and on those statements you're going to have a description for what the transaction is, and the vendor that they went to, and the amount, like all that stuff will show up, and the date. And that's not something that an employee can put in there. That's a third party that's putting that information onto the statement. So that's not something that can be fudged, and that's why accountants ask for statements, is because you can't you can't adjust those statements. You can't mess with those statements. Those are uh, primary source documents. And so if you're able to make it so that the Monero wallet and the notes thereof themselves become sort of unadjustable primary source documents for your employees, or your managers or whoever it is that's part of your organization that's making these expenses on the behalf of the organization with company funds, then that actually makes it so that the books are that much more integral. That makes it so that you can trust your employees are using the funds for business expenses exclusively and they're not embezzling the funds. And that makes it easier to pass an audit should an external auditor who wants to make sure that you as a public company are reporting things properly, and fraud is mitigated, or god forbid you have somebody from the IRS who wants to tie whatever deductions you're taking on your tax return to the source documents. They can then look at kind of what's taking place at the fundamental level. And that's something that could have never been done before if it wasn't for the view keys and their upgrade coming with full chain membership proofs. So that's something that allows for a lot of business adoption. Okay, so now we're going to get to like the far end of the regulatory spectrum, right? Where you have just hardcore regulation. And we're talking about the IRS. We're talking about exchanges, having to work with like FINRA stuff, or we're talking about even banks, external auditors, and all that kind of stuff. Well, this allows for whatever entity to become a perfectly compliant regulatory entity. Now, I know I'm talking to Monero Bros, and this is not something that is of interest for a lot of people, but at the end of the day, we're talking about something that is private by default money, and you could use whatever additional technologies you want to use. You can opt into whatever it is you want to opt into. If you want to be completely private and have none of this stuff be recorded, that's totally your prerogative, and that's sort of like the base layer of all this, and that's totally fine. But it's also nice if people want to opt into that kind of system, they can do that. And the technology allows them that option as well. Selective transparency, right? Whereas with Bitcoin, it's sort of like the inverse. You have to actually work to make yourself private and make yourself off the grid. But let's say that you have a company, and you're a public company, you're a publicly traded company. Well, you have internal auditors and you have external auditors. Now, what internal and external auditors need so that they can, issue a positive audit statement is they need source documents. We mentioned this before. And this is the case even for businesses that use a lot of cash. So if businesses use cash, again, they have cash receipts, they have bank deposit slips, they have third party documentation that is not internally generated that proves what it is that they're doing with those funds. And Monero, before this upgrade, did not really have an ability to offer that third party source documentation. And now that's a possibility. And the third party, of course, is the protocol itself with the view keys. And so you don't even need to have a bank. Again, you don't need to have any of these third parties. You don't need to use credit cards. You don't need to use any of this stuff. You can use Monero, and because of the view key, and you can give that view key to external auditors, internal auditors, the IRS, or whoever, you can have source documentation to prove your income and expense items on your financial statements, which is good for public investors, or for proving it to the tax authorities wherever it is you may be. So that's if you want to be, in the very hardcore regulatory compliance section. Now, one question that I thought about in regards to this is, okay, now let's see if we can get something else that can come up. Let's pop up Monero. I always want to give a shout out to Monero when we can. Now, let's say, because one thing I thought about is, okay, well, what if you have um, this view key, right? And you give that to somebody. The problem with that is they're going to be able to then track and trace everything from that point forward with that wallet, okay? And perhaps they even leak the view key to somebody else so they can see what's going on in that wallet. That's a real risk, right? And I really struggle with this question because it's like, okay, well, what if we did have the IRS come in or some taxing authority and they wanted to see what was going on with the transaction? Okay, what if you give them the view key and then they go to see everything that's going on outside of the audit periods? We wouldn't want that to happen. In fact, that's why some accountants really like to use QuickBooks Desktop as opposed to QuickBooks Online, because QuickBooks Desktop, you can have it segregated into years, and QuickBooks Online, everything's continuous. So if they get access to QuickBooks Online, they can see everything even before and after certain audit periods. So that's another conversation. But the thing with this is it's kind of like a similar thing. You give them access to the view key, they can then have um, an ability to analyze things that are beyond the purpose of their audit, and maybe that could lead to more questions, which leads to an expanded audit. We would not want that. So, what if, and this is a what if, but I think this is a decent solution to that problem. What if you use brand new wallets, brand new addresses, at the turn of every new accounting period? I think that would be the solution to that. So at the end of, 2025, what you would do is you would then have everybody in your organization start up a brand new wallet. And who knows, maybe they could just roll over the funds from the other wallet to the new wallet. Um, and they can just start spending from that wallet. You can infuse capital into everybody's new wallet, however it is you want to do that. But what that would do is that would make it so that all the activity for certain accounting periods are just limited to those periods of time. It's not something where you maybe have a view key leaked and somebody can see all the transactions taking place forevermore after that, or an auditor who wants to check out what's going on with your funds, they can then go before that audit period or after audit period, and then come up with other things that they maybe want to look into. So that would be the solution to that. You use like a new wallet in your organization for every new audit period, and that kind of keeps things pretty clean. So, that's an idea. Now, also on the regulatory consideration, this is why I spoke, earlier in this video about how great it would be for more accountants to come into this space, because there's going to be a great opportunity for bookkeepers who are very, simple bookkeepers. You don't need to have a CPA. You don't need to be like very sophisticated in all this. The bookkeeping side is actually fairly simple. I actually figured out how to do bookkeeping from Monero in a pretty easy way. Um, and I'll make another video about that. But effectively, what you can do as a bookkeeper is you can then get the view key from the person running the business, and then as transactions are happening, you can just go ahead and log those transactions to the books. And then at the end of the period, what they do is they pull the note sheet out of the wallet, which is, the notes are not, on the blockchain itself, so you can't see that with the view key. They would have to export the notes from the wallet. They send it to the accountant, and then they just log those transactions. And then one consideration that some people have in regards to using Monero or just another crypto in their business is the gain and loss consideration. And the gain and loss consideration, it's not just something that is a tax consideration. It's not like if they eliminated capital gains tomorrow, you wouldn't have to worry about gain or loss. That's not actually true, because if you look at 10Ks financial statements for a lot of big public companies, you'll notice a line item on the P&L called foreign exchange gain or loss. That's because a lot of these companies, they themselves use different currencies. Maybe they're doing currency hedging. Maybe they are buying goods and services in different currencies, and they need those different currencies to get access to those different goods and services. And so there's like a conversion that they have to do, and there's a gain and loss. So that is not just a tax matter. That is something that you just report on your financial statements for the purposes of completeness and accuracy. And so having gain and loss calculations done, if you're using crypto, that's something that you're just going to have to do. Now, the way to make that easy and the way to do the accounting for crypto in general is to record the fair market value. And again, I'll make another video on this. This might be a little heady for some people, but you record the fair market value of the transactions as they occur with whatever crypto that you're using, Monero, whatever. And then at the end of your accounting period, whether it's quarterly, monthly, yearly, you go ahead and make a gain or loss adjustment for the aggregate gain or loss on your transactions. And you can do that by exporting the transactions that you made within that certain accounting period, and maybe you just plug in those transactions to ChatGPT so that it can figure your gain and loss, right? It's really actually not that complicated, but you would just do that journal entry adjustment every period, and then boom, you've got your updated asset balance. And Monero crypto, it would be considered an other asset. It wouldn't be considered like a bank account because it's considered property, right? And then you would update the P&L for the gain or loss adjustment, for the period. So um, those are just some considerations there. So those are just some thoughts on why I think Monero is about to just explode in business adoption as soon as full chain membership proofs happen. And we already see a lot of new businesses coming to Monero, not only on Monerica, which, by the way, Riot, I need to talk to you. I got a buddy of mine who wants to get on Monerica. He's going to update his website today, I think, and he's going to say that he accepts Monero. He's like a cybersecurity guy, but he wants to get on this directory. And then I hear XMR Bazaar is becoming more popular, which is awesome. I saw jewelers going on there, people selling jerky, people selling beef tallow chips or something, and that's all cool. So the ecosystem is growing, which is great to see. But again, if we really want to have widespread business adoption, we have to make Monero and the technologies we have integrated into Monero, whether it's point of sale systems or whatever, easily integrated into accounting systems as well. Because businesses, they need to have accounting. And it's not just a matter of making sure that taxes are properly filed and all that stuff, but it's also just a matter of having accurate financial statements. And if they want to get loans, if they want to get investors, you got to have financial statements, which means that they need to have proper accounting done, which means that the accounting needs to be made simple for people who want to use this. So that's an important consideration. So I hope that provides some insights. Look at all these businesses. That's awesome. Look at all these businesses, man. But yeah, if you have comments, questions, let me know. I know that this is somewhat of an unconventional video, but good to be back. And if you want to offer a tip, Monero CPA is where I'm at. You can leave a little tip. If you've got questions you want to ask me, you could leave a tip, ask a question, whatever. I'll make a video on it. Or if you just want to be a nice person and tip, that's kind of cool too. So, all right, that's all I got for you. And shouts out to Roger Ver. I hope that he beats this case soon. I forgot to pull up his Free Roger website. Go sign this petition, freeroger.org. Oh, sorry. I guess that's not the right website. I guess it's freerogernow.org. I'm sorry, Roger. I don't have it pulled up, but I've listed it on my prior videos, and I hope Roger gets free here pretty soon. But you know what? Most importantly, I hope that he beats his case. Because if he beats his case and then the exit tax is ruled unconstitutional, that'll change the game. I mean, that'll be just absolutely fantastic. And maybe that's what the administration is waiting for. It could be the administration is waiting for, you know, looking at the outcome of this particular case, because if exit taxes are overruled, then that would be a greater outcome than just pardoning Roger and not letting the case finish out. You know, that could be a case to be made, although we want Roger out as soon as possible because what's going on with him is just absolutely ridiculous. So that's all I've got to say. Shouts out to the Monero Bros. Hope you all are doing well. See you next time. God bless.